This is Dr. Humeira Badsha, consultant rheumatologist, board member, and founder of the Middle East Arthritis Foundation. It gives me great pleasure to invite you to World Arthritis Week from the 10th to 15th of October. It's a completely online event. Come and learn from expert rheumatologists, physiotherapists, yoga specialists, and nutritionists about your arthritis.
Hi, I'm Sandria. On behalf of the Middle East Arthritis Foundation, I would like to invite you to register to the World Arthritis Week, which happens from the 10th of October. A lot of doctor-patient discussions, professional speaking on mental and emotional well-being, yoga and Pilates and dance happening. So please go all out, register yourselves, friends and caregivers, and enjoy yourselves.
مرحبا، أنا عبير. أنا كتير متحمسة وأنا عم بستنى الإصدار الجديد من أسبوع مرض التهاب المفاصل العالمي اللي حيكون أونلاين حيبدأ ب10 أكتوبر. جلسات ممتعة ومعلومات قيمة ومفيدة بانتظاركم، لهيك لا تنسوا تسجلوا حالكم وتسجلوا عائلاتكم وأصحابكم. بنشوفكم بجلسات الأونلاين، ديروا بالكم على حالكم.
Hi, I'm Dr. Humeira Badsha. I'm a consultant rheumatologist with 30 years of experience in rheumatology across 3 countries, the United States, UAE, and Singapore. The most common question patients ask us is about diet and how they can exercise and take charge of their arthritis. Hence, I've taken all these years of experience and evidence-based medicine, as well as consulted experts in the field. And we have this book for you, The Wellness Guide to Arthritis. Proceeds from this book go to the Middle East Arthritis Foundation. So I do hope you will read and find this book useful.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome all our attendees to our second day of the World Arthritis Week. And I'm excited to moderate this session on diet and nutrition as we have three amazing speakers. Our very first speaker is Dr. Humeira Badsha, who really needs no introduction. She's a consultant rheumatologist and a medical director at Dr. Humeira Badsha Medical Center, Dubai, and also a consultant rheumatologist at Emirates Hospital. She was trained at University of California, Los Angeles, and is American board certified in internal medicine, rheumatology, and certified in musculoskeletal ultrasound by the American College of Rheumatology. She also has over 2 decades of experience as a rheumatologist across 3 countries, the USA, Singapore, and UAE. And we're going to take advantage of her experience for her to start the first talk today, which is foods to avoid for arthritis. Dr. Humeira Badsha, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Maysam. Dr. Maysam, for everyone, is also an amazing rheumatologist at the American Hospital, Dubai, and she's part of this great group of rheumatologists who support patients in the UAE and have attended every single World Arthritis Day to support our patients. So, you know, the commonest question we get asked in busy clinics is, doctor, what should we eat? What should we avoid? And it's a really hard question to answer easily. I have made several YouTube videos about this topic, and you can check out this online. Today, I'm just going to present some of the evidence related to this. At the very outset, I want to state that diet is not a cure. People keep coming and saying, oh, my uncle says he cured his arthritis with this diet, or someone else eliminated this food. Definitely, diet can improve symptoms. We have seen that. All of us have seen that with our patients. But there's no substitute for medication and advice from your doctor. So please don't avoid that. Don't try to take matters into your own hands, stop your medication and say, you know, Dr. Badsha gave this talk on diet. I'm just going to talk about how you can improve your symptoms. I have written this paper, The Role of Diet in Influencing Rheumatoid Arthritis Disease Activity. It's published in a peer-reviewed journal, and it has been cited extensively in other journals pertaining to diet and autoimmune diseases. So everything about this talk pertains to autoimmune arthritis, such as rheumatoid arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis, and psoriatic arthritis. And we try to be evidence-based and try to give you evidence related to certain foods which may be good for you or bad for you. The subsequent talks will talk more about the gut microbiome and how you can generally be healthier and improve your overall health. But there may be some foods which directly influence your disease activity, which you may want to avoid. So this article is meant for doctors. It's on the internet. It can be accessed by anyone. It's a free article. So the first food we talk about is gluten. And I've tried to include everywhere in the smaller letters are the references, the peer-reviewed articles, which are published, available online. So anyone can look up these claims. Gluten is found in wheat. We see a lot of increasing gluten intolerance these days. That's because of one, genetically modified wheat being grown, and also because of the way we process wheat, releasing a lot of gluten. One study said that there is 40% more gluten in wheat products in the United States these days as compared to 20 years ago. There is a lot of studies which show that there is an overlap between rheumatoid arthritis and celiac disease, which actually is a severe inflammatory condition related to gluten intake. And there have been studies showing, which is on the left side, the studies showing that eliminating gluten improves the symptoms of arthritis. Next big one is sugar. There are many studies that have consistently shown that increased consumption of sugar leads to diabetes and metabolic syndrome, increased risk of death, as well as autoimmune diseases. So here is a study which says high glucose intake exacerbates autoimmunity through reactive oxygen species mediated TCF-beta cytokine activation. Very technical, but there is a lot of studies and papers on this, sugar and the mosaic of autoimmunity as well. So sugar, again, has increased our diet. Beware of hidden sugars in added sauces, in processed foods, etc. Omega-6. So a lot of people think they're benefiting themselves by taking omega capsules, but they don't know that many capsules of omega are actually omega-3, 6, 9. And omega-6 is actually associated with increased inflammation, as found in some vegetable oils, including sunflower, corn, and canola oils. So you need to be careful about what kind of oil you cook in, as well as meats such as chicken, pork, and beef. Omega-3 is the good omega, and it's found in fish oil, flaxseed, and walnuts, and it's beneficial for arthritis. The ideal ratio of omega-6 to 3 is to 4 is to 1. So to achieve this ratio, this is the anti-inflammatory ratio. You decrease consumption of fried and fatty foods and increase omega-3 rich foods, or supplement with omega-3. Sweetened beverages. Drinking one or more sugary sodas a day, including regular cola, caffeine-free cola, other sugar-sweetened carbonated sodas, and even Diet Coke. So people think they're drinking Diet Coke, and that's not really a good thing for you. Increase a woman's risk of developing rheumatoid arthritis. So these are all the studies on the side. They've shown that increasing even one soda consumption increases your risk of rheumatoid arthritis and other autoimmune diseases. And there's been a big registry survey which was published with major rheumatologists and arthritis and rheumatism in 2017, which showed that drinking sweetened beverages increased your risk. Also, intake of high fructose corn syrup, sweetened soft drinks, fruit drinks, apple juice. You have these naturally sweetened apple juice. So what do they put in that? They put corn syrup, which is also not good for you. Dairy products. Now, this is the most controversial subject. We've always been taught, I've been taught in medical school to tell my patients to have lots of milk, lots of yogurt, lots of cheese, because the calcium is really important for healthy bones. However, there are two problems with dairy products. One is the lactose. A lot of patients, especially Asian patients, we are lactose intolerant as we grow older. And that's very common to have symptoms of diarrhea or upset stomach, bloating, gas after consumption of milk or cheese. But there's also a protein in dairy products called casein, which directly influences inflammation and increases symptoms of autoimmunity. There was a study which published in the Journal of Nutrition in 2015, showed that increasing dairy foods increase low-grade inflammation, and a study of 40,000 people with osteoarthritis found that those who ate more dairy products were more likely to need hip replacement surgery. Now, of course, it's controversial. The greatest source of calcium is dairy products. Whatever any nutritionist may tell you, there is some calcium in green leafy vegetables, not very well absorbed, not in the quantities or the concentration we see in dairy products. There is some calcium in nuts, in fish, bony fish, but the number one source of calcium is from dairy products. So these are all the studies on the right talking about eliminating dairy products and improvement of symptoms of rheumatoid arthritis, effects of a very low-fat vegan diet in subjects with rheumatoid arthritis, effect of dietary restrictions on disease activity in rheumatoid arthritis in the Annals of Rheumatic Diseases. All of these studies talk about eliminating dairy products completely to improve symptoms of rheumatoid arthritis. Now, what do you do then? I always tell my patients then to increase their consumption of green vegetables, nuts, and also to take a calcium supplement, because patients with rheumatoid arthritis and other autoimmune diseases which are inflammatory are more at risk for osteoporosis. Red meat increases the risk of developing rheumatoid arthritis. Now, I'm not a proponent of vegetarian or vegan diets, but there is some evidence that vegan diets improve the symptom of arthritis. While this may be difficult to follow, at the very least, you should make every attempt to reduce your consumption of red meat. And those are all the studies on the right side. There's an association between red meat intake and biomarkers of inflammation in women. A vegan diet free of gluten improves the signs and symptoms of rheumatoid arthritis. And this was published in the journal Rheumatology, which is a major journal. A red meat derived diet increases inflammation and cancer progression. So I think every attempt should be made to decrease red meat and also processed meats. Processed foods, that's the next thing. Processed foods are not just McDonald's or KFC. Processed foods are also biscuits, cookies, anything which comes in a package, snacks, which are high in trans fats and increase inflammation. And a huge number of studies on this effect of industrially produced trans fat on markers of systemic inflammation. There's evidence in randomized trials, and also increasing, there are more technical things which I don't need to go into. Salt is the other bad part. High sodium intake is associated with self-reported rheumatoid arthritis and increase in autoimmune disease. And beware of hidden salts in ketchup, pickles, chips, other packaged foods. The role of dietary sodium in autoimmune diseases. The Salty Truth was published in Autoimmune Reviews, which was a major journal, and also increased salt intake associated with increased rheumatoid arthritis symptoms in medicine, which is a big journal as well, well-known journal. So those were the foods to avoid. And now I'm going to talk about the best foods for arthritis. And again, all of this is in a peer-reviewed journal. Just reviewing what to avoid: gluten, dairy, sugar, red meat, processed foods, sugary drinks, salt, and omega-6. So when we talk about the best foods to eat, this is going to be talked about in more detail in the subsequent talks with my colleagues, Victoria Tipper and Ahlaam Ali. But maintaining a healthy gut microbiome is a prebiotic diet, and you need to consume enough dietary fiber to increase your fiber in your diet, reduces your risk of osteoarthritis and pain. Men need about 30 grams per day, women 25 grams per day. These are some of the foods which are associated with fiber. Now, lots of my patients, Indian patients or Pakistani or Asian patients, may say that they should not eat dal, which are lentils, because it increases arthritis. And that's not true at all. There is no evidence that eating lentils increases symptoms of arthritis. So lentils are high and rich in fiber, and you should consume them as much as possible. So great prebiotics foods are onion, garlic, apple, banana, leeks, asparagus, oats, cocoa, and flax seeds. Try to consume these as much as possible. Probiotics, there is some controversy about whether taking probiotic in capsule form actually improves your symptoms or not, because there are trillions of bacteria in your system. Probiotics are trying to mimic the good bacteria in your body and trying to actually improve the gut microbiome, because people with arthritis or autoimmune disease have a different gut microbiome. So the dose apparently should be at least 50 billion. You need to look for at least 10 different strains in the probiotic you buy. Need to make sure you have an acid-resistant capsule so that the bacteria in the capsule are not destroyed in the stomach acid. You need to make sure that it has some additional prebiotic fiber in the capsule. And as much as possible, see if these organisms are there: Lactobacillus acidophilus and Lactobacillus casei. These are some things which have been shown to be beneficial in autoimmune arthritis. Ginger, we all know about the anti-inflammatory aspects of ginger. It's very commonly used in South Asian cooking. It's there in almost every recipe. And highly concentrated doses are useful in treating people with osteoarthritis of the knee. Similarly, turmeric, this is also used in cooking, in South Asian cooking, and everyone now is consuming turmeric. But we have studies of the concentrated form of turmeric called curcumin, which comes in capsule form. And the dose, and there are studies which show that this benefits osteoarthritis, especially. It decreases knee pain. The dose is about 1,000 to 1,500 milligrams of curcumin. And they have shown that curcumin mixed with black pepper is more easily absorbed. So the concentrated form of black pepper is piperine.
Vitamin D is very, very important. Now, it's not a dietary thing, but I just included it here. The primary source of vitamin D is sunlight, but the absorption from the sun is hampered because we don't really go out in the sun. We stay in air conditioning, we wear sunscreen, or even if you have pigmented skin, it sort of blocks the absorption of vitamin D. So many studies have shown that people who have autoimmune diseases and maintain a good vitamin D level have reduced disease activity, rheumatoid arthritis disease activity. We've seen even with COVID that having high levels of vitamin D can prevent COVID infection or serious complications from COVID. And you need to have your levels of vitamin D in your blood about 30 nanograms. I would say that almost universally, all patients with autoimmune disease are vitamin D deficient and should be supplemented. And I would say get a blood test to guide how much supplement you need. We already spoke a little bit about omega-3 fatty acids, not omega-6, and it's found in things like salmon, mackerel, sardines, trout, and walnuts, flaxseed. The doses in the studies which benefit arthritis is about 1,000 to 3,000 milligrams per day. Obviously, taking higher doses can cause some stomach indigestion and digestive problems, but about 1,000 milligrams per day is quite easily digested and absorbed. And there's studies which actually show that methotrexate works better when you add 1,000 milligrams of omega-3. Fruits have various enzymes which help arthritis. Grapes, I don't want to go into the details of which enzymes, grapes, pineapples, dark cherries or cherry juice, all of these decrease inflammation. Berries, especially those who have 2 servings of strawberries per week, were less likely to have inflammation. Berries are rich in quercetin and rutin, and people who, like rats which got these supplements, had less of arthritis-related inflammation. Broccoli has sulforaphane, which is also found to block a type of cell involved in rheumatoid arthritis development. So eat a lot of broccoli, please. Spinach, of course, we said not only is an antioxidant, they're great sources of calcium. Be careful how you cook it, no overcooking. And olive oil, they found that people who took fish oil or olive oil daily had less levels of inflammatory markers. Be careful about your cooking oils. It's important to know about your smoking point and oxidator point. You need to cook with oils that are stable at high heat. Avoid vegetable oils, canola oils, which have polyunsaturated fats, and fish oils and flax oils. Coconut oil is more or less resistant to heat and it is safe. Olive oil is mostly composed of monounsaturated fats. Also, avocado and safflower and sesame may be safer options. So I'm going to stop here and thank you for your attention. We'll be taking questions at the end, but I'm happy if you can share your questions in the chat box. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dr. Bhavna Khan, rheumatologist in Dubai. It gives me a great pleasure to introduce this amazing book, The Wellness Guide to Arthritis, written by Dr. Humeira Badsha. It is simple yet comprehensive. It is scientific and evidence-based. Apart from giving you information on various forms of arthritis, the treatment options, it has very simple illustrations on day-to-day exercises for patients with rheumatic diseases such as rheumatoid arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis, etc. My favorite is on the diet and arthritis. This is one of the common questions asked by all my patients, how they can modify their diet to benefit their arthritis. And this book has it all.
Okay, our next presenter is Mrs. Victoria Tipper. She has a wealth of experience. She has a bachelor's degree in genetics and a master's in human nutrition. Victoria has dedicated her life to the study of the human body. In addition to her studies, she's a certified executive performance coach, a Gallup certified strengths coach, and a life coach. She's a neurolinguistic programming practitioner and emotional intelligence practitioner, and a fitness trainer. She has spent a great deal of time specializing in gut health and also a gut and psychology syndrome practitioner, focusing on gut healing and its relation to brain function. She believes that combining a holistic approach, focusing on physical and mental tools to enhance health and well-being are the key to making life-changing improvements. And as such, she is the expert person to talk about her diet and recipe secrets. So Mrs. Victoria, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for that introduction, much appreciated. So can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, I think I was muted for a moment there. So first of all, I just wanted to discuss how important it is, particularly with osteoarthritis, that people are a healthy weight. And even just the smallest amount of weight loss, if you are not within a healthy weight range, can really lead to quite vast improvements. So we know that every step will exert 3 to 6 times the amount of the person's body weight on the knee joint. So if we think about that, losing, if you are somebody who's overweight with osteoarthritis, losing something like 5 kilograms, which, you know, is a considerable amount, but it is an achievable amount, that will mean that you're actually reducing the burden on that knee joint with each step by about 15 to 30 kilograms. So it is quite considerable. And research has shown that, you know, getting that amount of weight loss really helps to reduce the risk of developing symptomatic knee osteoarthritis by 50% and reducing that pain and disability. So it's important to make sure that we are within that healthy BMI, a healthy weight range. It's not just about, and with different types of arthritis. So for example, looking at conditions like rheumatoid arthritis or gout, it's not just about your weight, it's looking at your body composition. So there's been a lot of research that has shown that in conditions like rheumatoid arthritis, that perhaps the weight isn't unhealthy. So it's not that the weight is going up, but people are reducing muscle mass and increasing body fat. And our fat actually produces inflammatory markers, and in particular, this visceral fat. So visceral fat, as you can see on the picture there, it's not the fat that we can pinch. So if you pinch your tummy area, I'm definitely pinching an inch there, that's your subcutaneous fat. That's still going to be producing some inflammatory markers, but the dangerous fat is the fat that we can't pinch, we can't see it, that visceral fat that surrounds the organs. And it produces even more of those inflammatory markers than normal fat cells, looking at things like interleukin-6. And, you know, arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis is it's to do with inflammation. So we're wanting to make sure it's not just about making sure you are a healthy body weight, but also making sure you have a healthy body composition. So making sure you have a good muscle mass and that your body fat is within a healthy range and your visceral fat is within a healthy range. There are ways that you can test this. You know, you can go and use a body composition analysis machine. A lot of the clinics will have those devices. Some of the gyms nowadays are actually having them as well. What are the main drivers of visceral fat? What are the things that, you know, increase this dangerous fat that's going to increase inflammation and therefore increase, you know, the risk and the incidence of rheumatoid arthritis and gout? The overconsumption of refined carbohydrates and sugar. We all know sugar's bad. But even looking at those refined carbohydrates, the white rice, the white breads, the white pastas, they really are very pro-inflammatory and cause an increase in the storage of the subcutaneous fat, but also that really dangerous visceral fat. eating in too big a window of time. I'll cover this a little bit towards the end, but this is something that is good for everyone, no matter what age you are, no matter what your health condition is, whether you have arthritis or not. All of us should really only be eating within a 12-hour window. This doesn't include drinking water. But if many of us are waking up and you might be having your cup of coffee or chai, tea, with milk at, say, I don't know, I'll throw out a number like, say, 6 a.m. if you're an early riser. And then some people might have a snack before bed at, say, sort of 10 p.m. You're really not giving your body enough time for your digestive tract to actually rest and repair. And actually, anytime we eat food, even if we're eating healthy food, it causes a little bit of inflammation to occur. So, and that is a completely natural process. There are going to be some foods, I'll discuss that in a few slides, that are going to be more inflammatory. But the idea is to actually allow your digestive tract a bit of time to just have that rest and repair. And that's really going to help reduce inflammation. It's going to help reduce that visceral fat, and it's going to help, improve arthritis. And stress. Obviously this is too big a subject for me to cover within this time. And I believe yesterday there was a lot spoken about, the emotional well-being. Stress is a big driver in any form of autoimmune condition. So conditions like rheumatoid arthritis, it's a massive driver, but it's definitely something that's going to increase that visceral fat. So we all need to be making sure we're doing things to prioritize rest and manage those stress levels. So I spoke about sugar. As I said, we all know that sugar is bad for us, unless you've been living under a rock, which most of us have not. We've maybe been living indoors quite a bit with the pandemic, but we still know that the word sugar, has many negative connotations. The food marketers are very clever, and they realize that if they call something, maybe a corn syrup or a fruit concentrate, a fruit juice concentrate, even like fruit juice, that we are not going to recognize that as sugar, but it's still going to behave as sugar in the body. Here are 50 different names for sugar. The last time I looked, I think there's something like 64 different names for sugar. So the main takeaway from this is, ideally, you're not adding sugar into foods, but also you're reading food labels. In a perfect world, we're not actually eating foods that contain, that have a label, things that come in a packet. I believe something like 74% of packaged foods will have added sugar in them. So just become a food label detective. If you're buying something with a label, and if something comes up that looks like it's sugar, so anything called a concentrate, a syrup, anything that has an O's on the end of it, things like fructose, dextrose, maltose, that's just another word for sugar. If that comes up in the first 3 to 5 ingredients on the ingredients list, that's going to be a product that's really high in sugar, and you want to move away from it. Sugar is going to drive inflammation, and of course with arthritis we want to be really reducing inflammation entirely. So be aware, be a food detective. It also, just as a side note, if you are consuming something that has sugar in it, in 100 grams, something that has about 5 grams of sugar out of 100 is considered low. And you certainly don't want to be going over anything more than 15 grams per 100 grams. So just be aware and really try and, do a bit of a sugar audit. I'd actually urge you, maybe, when you get off this session today, or whether it's tomorrow, look through your cupboards. What are the things that you're consuming that actually contain labels? Read through them and start to identify which of those ingredients look like they could actually be sugar. One of the most important things, and I believe that there's going to be a talk after this, so I'm not going to dive into it too much, but it's really, really important that we're actually looking after our microbiome. So changes in the microbiome, or what we think of as dysbiosis, are linked to rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis, gout, spondyloarthritis. when we talk about the microbiome, we have microbes all over our body, on our skin, but really we're talking about the microbes that we have within our gut, and 40,000 different types of bacteria, 5 million types of fungi, 300,000 species of parasites. These are the microbes that actually are a game changer in terms of our health and well-being. And we want to make sure we have as wide a variety of those microbes, because they play a massive role in helping our overall health, but particularly with conditions like arthritis. So those changes in the microbiome can occur due to a number of different reasons. One of them being, if we're consuming too much sugar or too many processed foods, that's really going to feed the bad microbes, and it's going to starve the good microbes. So we want to make sure we're feeding those good microbes. Overuse of certain medications, things like the contraceptive pill, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories can have an impact as well, steroids. And of course, these are all medications that a lot of people are having to take. So it's really being mindful of the fact that when you're taking those medications, you need to put in extra effort to support that microbiome. The research really research shows to have a minimum of 30 different plant-based foods per week. Actually, the closer we can get to 50, the better. There's a tribe, I believe, in Tanzania, the Hazda tribe. They have one of the most diverse microbiomes that there is going. And it's because the variety of plant-based foods is so vast in comparison to ours. We're living in the Middle East. We're living in a very multicultural society where you go into a supermarket and there are so many different types of plant-based foods, fruits, vegetables, whatever it might be, that you're not used to having in your diet. So I would say every week, maybe if it's every 2 weeks, but go and try a new type of fruit or vegetable. Just increase that variety. This is going to be one of the main game changers in terms of supporting that microbiome, and that is so important when it comes to managing arthritis. So the autoimmune triad, and this I'm going to just sort of talk a bit about the rheumatoid arthritis here. And we know as well that one autoimmune condition can lead on to another. I see so many clients who will have conditions like rheumatoid arthritis, but also are presenting with things like Hashimoto's and a number of other different autoimmune conditions. What we know, I believe it's Dr. Fasano came up with this autoimmune triad, the fact that in order for a person to have an autoimmune condition, of course, we need to have the genetic susceptibility. There need to be those environmental triggers that can be in the form of food sensitivities, which we'll be talking about, toxins. I've painted my face a little bit today, but either I've got my nail varnish on and everything. But these are all things that can be potential toxins for the body. Even the toxins in our environment, what we're putting on our skin, even looking at taking receipts, the ink that you have on those receipts. These can all act as toxins on the body. Infections, things like H. pylori, Epstein-Barr virus, these have all been associated with autoimmune conditions and things like rheumatoid arthritis and stress. The third area is, having that leaky gut. We can't necessarily change our genetics. We can change the expression of our genes. We can remove some of those environmental triggers. Even for example, things like smoking, things like breast implants. These are all things that have also been shown to be triggers in terms of autoimmune conditions. But one of the main things that we can look to do is also looking at those food sensitivities, also looking at healing the gut. So when it comes to a leaky gut, essentially, the cells of our intestines, they're one cell thick. And what happens is that, and this is completely natural, the cells will open and close to allow nutrients to go out into the bloodstream and to pass through into the body. What can happen, or what occurs when we get a leaky gut, is that actually those cells, rather than opening and then closing, they stay open. And so this means that the foods that we're eating may be not getting digested in the way that they should. They're escaping out of the intestines into the bloodstream, and this is causing an increase in inflammation, and this is really driving inflammatory conditions like arthritis. So it's really important that we reduce and improve the integrity of that lining. So certain things that can be triggers, we've sort of spoken about that. I spoke about this a little bit before: stress, infections, different pathogens, toxins, certain drugs, like I said, steroids can play a role, contraceptive pills, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, but also food particles. So this can be a real driver of inflammation. We want to really, really reduce that. So in terms of healing the gut, healing that gut lining, we want to be reducing those inflammatory foods. And inflammatory foods can be different for different people. But for everyone, sugar is a massively inflammatory food. So that's something I've mentioned, we really want to reduce those refined carbs, and also high fructose corn syrup. This is something that we find in a lot of processed foods, a lot of fast foods, things like fizzy drinks as well. You find it in juices. So just to be aware, you want to be reducing that. The other thing with things like high fructose corn syrup, it has the ability to form these advanced glycation end products, which are really, really pro-inflammatory and have been shown to actually increase or to be increasing conditions like arthritis, and can be real drivers of inflammation and pain. Conventional salt, we want to throw out that table salt entirely. Not all salt was created equal. Things like your Himalayan salt can be really quite good, and particularly in the warmer weather, which in the Middle East we seem to always have. If you're sweating a little bit more, having a little bit of that salt can actually be a really good way to replace some electrolytes. Gluten, I would say, so something that happens with gluten is that it does actually cause that leaky gut to occur. It increases zonulin, which will mean that it actually causes those gaps to stay open. So really removing gluten for a lot of people is a massive game changer. Conventional dairy as well. Not all dairy is bad for everyone. a lot of people in conventional dairy, I would say, just completely avoid it entirely. It's very, very inflammatory. You're not going to be getting any sort of like use from it at all. If you had a cow in your back garden, which I'm sure most of us do not, and you're getting milk straight from the cow, then it might be a different case. If you are doing things, for some people, if there isn't an IgE allergy there, then for some people, if you start to make, your own sort of yogurt or doing things like kefir, then you're actually going to be, that could be something that you are able to tolerate and isn't going to be pro-inflammatory, because the probiotics, because those are probiotic foods, so the good bacteria in those foods will digest a lot of the things like lactose that people will have issues with when it comes to dairy. Nightshades and other personal food intolerances. So nightshades, for a lot of people with arthritis, they do find when they remove, things like potatoes, tomatoes, peppers, chili, that they do get improvements in their symptoms. So those sorts of foods can be really pro-inflammatory for some people. Again, for everyone, grain-fed meat. I personally, I'm not anti eating animal products entirely, but I'm pro ethically sourced and well-sourced animal products. So I heard a bit of Dr. Humeira's talk at the end there, and she mentioned about that omega-6. Those omega-6 fatty acids, they're really driving inflammation. And grain-fed meat is much higher in omega-6 than omega-3. So we want to be avoiding that entirely, going for grass-fed, going for organic, just being really conscious about the animal products that you're consuming. And I mentioned the fact that high fructose corn syrup can cause an increase in these, what we call advanced glycation end products. So these are things that really drive that inflammation in arthritis. And we find it in fried foods, anything that's kind of charred or burnt as well. So if you think about a barbecue and those burnt bits that you get, you don't want to be eating that. Nothing that's burnt. Once it's burnt, it's really much higher in those advanced glycation end products, and that's going to drive inflammation. Processed meats, avoid those deli meats, your salamis, etc. They're really high in those. Cheeses as well, fried eggs. So there's a big difference, if you're, and eggs aren't going to be for everyone. I'll speak about that in a moment as well. But if you're somebody that can tolerate eggs, if you're having eggs, going for poached eggs, boiled eggs versus fried eggs is going to be much healthier, because it's going to be much lower in those advanced glycation end products. Things like margarine, mayonnaise. Another good tip in terms of cooking and ways to reduce those advanced glycation end products, because these are really things that increase as we're heating foods at a really high heat and when we cook things for longer. So a way to reduce it, cooking at a lower temperature and cooking for a shorter period of time, and also adding in an acidic component, something like lemon juice, a bit of apple cider vinegar, some tomato juice, if that's something that you can tolerate. But that's really going to be beneficial in terms of reducing those advanced glycation end products. So it's not just about what we're eating, but the way that we're cooking has an impact on inflammation. Again, Dr. Humeira spoke about this. Those vegetable oils, they're really high in those omega-6 fatty acids. In a perfect world, ideally, we want to be having a ratio of 2 to 1 of your omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acids. And our modern day diet is more like 20 to 1. And one of the main reasons being the overuse of those vegetable oils. So of course, when you're eating and when you're cooking at home, you have the choice of what oil you're using. When you're eating out in a restaurant, they're not really going to be considering, the omega-6 to omega-3 ratios. They're considering cost. So they're going to be using the cheaper oils, and they're going to be reusing them and reusing them. So it's going to be really high in those omega-6s, but also those advanced glycation end products. So again, avoiding those corn, safflower, cottonseed, grapeseed, canola, peanut and soybean oil. As Dr. Humeira said, better choices being like your extra virgin olive oil, coconut oil, avocado oil. If you can tolerate dairy, a bit of grass-fed ghee is fantastic, really healing for the gut, or a bit of grass-fed butter also. And artificial sweeteners, we want to really be avoiding those as best we can. The thing about when we use artificial sweeteners, they may not necessarily spike your blood sugar levels, but they're still training you to crave sweet. And actually, we want to start reducing our sweet cravings. And a good way of doing that is by reducing the amount of, obviously, sugar that you're having. And after 21 days, your taste buds will start to actually retrain themselves. Excuse me. So it's almost like going through a little bit of that cold turkey. We're certainly reducing it gradually, bit by bit. But artificial sweeteners, I see them a lot in a lot of products that are promoted as being healthy. So when you find those, protein bars, or if you're using protein powders, there'll be things like sucralose, which is used a lot. These are things that you want to be avoiding. Natural sweeteners, going for things like cinnamon is going to be a much better choice. Or if you're needing to use a little bit of sugar, a little bit of coconut sugar, it has a much smaller, lower impact on blood sugar levels and on insulin, and therefore inflammation. And caffeine and alcohol, they are both really quite pro-inflammatory. It's not to say that you can never have those things, but it would be a good idea to actually look to remove those pro-inflammatory foods for at least 30 days. And then you can maybe start to reintroduce some foods and work out which of the foods that are actually, personally affecting you. Another part of gut healing, we want to restore and replace. So this is really looking at increasing things like stomach acid, increasing your body's ability to actually digest food, because that's something that we see a lot as well, in arthritis, just that, and particularly in things and conditions like rheumatoid arthritis, that there isn't that ability to actually, and sometimes it's, to do with medication use as well, that our stomach acid reduces. Our stomach acid reduces naturally just as we get older, by the way. This is just something that happens. So natural ways to do it, to increase that. And, a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar in some water, half an hour before you're eating your main meals. And then don't drink any water that half an hour before your meal, during your meal, and up to 1 hour afterwards, because that water is actually going to dilute your stomach acid and hinder digestion. Sauerkraut, an amazing food. It's, as Dr. Humeira mentioned, cabbage is great. It's an amazing superfood to have. And when it's fermented, which is what sauerkraut is, it's got that good bacteria in it. And that is going to help get the good bacteria into your body, but also increase stomach acid. And potentially you might need some digestive support supplements. So I think that those may have been spoken about, but I would always say Digest Gold is probably one of the best, digestive support supplements that you can take. It's a really good brand. Reinoculate, getting those probiotics into your body, and prebiotics. Probiotics, foods that contain that good bacteria, or perhaps in supplement form. So we're talking about things like, kefir, kimchi, sauerkraut, kvass, all of those foods. You can make your own homemade pickles. There's so many things you can ferment, which are great. So you want to be having those on a daily basis. Then there's prebiotics. Prebiotics are the food that feed your good bacteria. They're really, really important, and often something that's overlooked. So, you can look at, one of my favorite ways to do it is I use green banana flour. So I'll add that in to my cooking or into a smoothie. If I'm making something like some coconut porridge in the morning for breakfast, I'll add that. Raw onions, cooked onions, raw garlic, Jerusalem artichoke. These are all really good prebiotic foods that you want to be having on a daily basis. And then we need to repair the gut lining. Bone broth is one of the best things to have. I have a cup of it every day. I don't have arthritis. I have Hashimoto's, but so I'm part of the autoimmune community. This is something that is such a game changer. You know, it's full of so many things that are going to be great for arthritis. But also you can look at things like collagen. I also take collagen peptides, which is great, and maybe even something like an L-glutamine. Going back to that bone broth, because I'm not sure if I added a slide on bone broth. Bone broth is great for arthritis because it's full of collagen, gelatin, but also things like hyaluronic acid and glucosamine. So things that people are taking in supplement form. If you can get it in whole food form, even better. This is the way that, you know, nature intended us to have those foods. And it's, yeah, just a great way to really reduce inflammation and help improve joint pain. So what do we want to boost? You know, I would say in general for arthritis, the Mediterranean type style diet is the one to go for. It's really, really anti-inflammatory, full of those omega-3 fatty acids. So we're going to be getting closer to that 2-to-1 ratio omega-6 to omega-3 rather than that 20-to-1, which is where most people are. And, you know, as Dr. Humeira said, fatty fish, salmon, mackerel, herring, you know, sardines, walnuts, chia, flax. If you're somebody, you know, who, if you're a vegan, if you're avoiding animal products and you're wanting to take a supplement, you can actually take an algae fish oil, because that's where the fish are getting their omega-3. They're, you know, munching away on the algae, and therefore they're going to be high in the DHA and EPA. So really, yeah, algae, you know, is a great source of getting that omega-3 and reducing inflammation. Those monounsaturated fats, olive oil, have olive oil every day. You know, it's amazing for arthritis, but amazing just for overall health and well-being. So at least, you know, I have lashings of olive oil, add it to everything. Avocado, nuts and seeds, if you're somebody that is able to tolerate nuts and seeds. Foods high in sulfur. Sulfur is really good for arthritis and for that sort of like pain management. So garlic, onions, asparagus and cabbage are going to be great sources. Low GI fruits, in particular, I know Dr. Humeira mentioned things like berries. They're fantastic to have. I also would like to just add the papaya, pineapple and kiwi, those fruits that naturally have those proteolytic enzymes in them. They've been shown to also be really good in terms of treatment for arthritis. So to add those on a daily basis, lots and lots of vegetables. Remember, it's that variety, getting 30 different types of plant-based foods, those fermented foods, those probiotic foods, getting that good bacteria back into your body. That bone broth, it's essential, having a cup a day. Nice little tip, add in a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. It makes it taste delicious, I promise you. And all of the spices, you know, they're so anti-inflammatory. You know, Mother Nature's medicine cabinet. Turmeric in particular is just unbelievable. Turmeric, ginger, unbelievably anti-inflammatory, and a lot of really good research behind it. And then green and white tea, you know, again, really anti-inflammatory and really good replacements if you're looking to move away from caffeine. And, you know, drinking lots of water, adding in a bit of that Himalayan salt in the morning. You know, I put a pinch to maybe a quarter of a teaspoon in the morning to just help replace electrolytes. I've sort of mentioned, because I'm just wary that I tend to talk way too much. I'm very aware of the time, but I've kind of gone through the power of bone broth and how really having a cup a day is going to be so beneficial for arthritis because of all of the great things that it has within it, just to support joints. It's going to be amazing. I wanted to now just speak about, particularly for those who have rheumatoid arthritis, so the autoimmune protocol. This is something, it's definitely a lot more challenging, should we say, but it's really where you see some amazing results. So different people react to different foods. And the autoimmune protocol removes anything that can actually be driving that inflammation, and that can be increasing, your pain and your discomfort and worsening your symptoms. So it removes all of the nightshades, as I mentioned, things like, chili, tomatoes, peppers, potatoes, eggplant, aubergine, whatever you want to call it, wherever you're from. So removing those processed oils, berry and seed dried spices, grains, legumes, so those beans and lentils, alcohol, eggs, coffee, cocoa, soy, dairy, the non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, refined sugars, the nut and seed oils, and the nuts and seeds. So we want to be removing those foods for a minimum of 30 days. And I realized you look at that list and you kind of think, okay, right, well, what's left? What's left is a lot of vegetables, looking at your healthy fats and oils, offal, things like liver, I can manage liver, but, if you can go for like heart, whatever part of the animal body that you can go for, and lots of fish, bone broth, looking at meat and poultry, those fermented foods, those low GI fruits, herbs and spices, and coconut products. So this is where things like, you can look at in terms of flour, things like coconut flour, cassava flour, tiger nut flour can be really good things to have. You can get coconut wraps as well, quite readily available now. So you do that for 30 days, and then you start to reintroduce certain foods. And actually the reintroduction cycle, you'd look to do one thing at a time so that you can work out which food you are reacting to. I would always say the stages of the protocol, if you're somebody that this is all completely new to you, I would say starting off with 2 to 4 weeks looking at paleo. So that's where you're removing grains, dairy, legumes, those beans and lentils, and you're focusing on having kind of like still having your nuts and seeds, your fruits and veggies, your eggs. So you're doing it step by step, and you're adding in things like that bone broth. You're adding in those fermented foods on a daily basis. So you're starting to heal and repair the gut lining and get that good bacteria back into the body. So then you do that autoimmune protocol afterwards for at least 30 days. For some people, it may need to be longer. You really want to do it to a point where your symptoms are really starting to improve quite drastically. And I've seen this happen. This is all relatively new-ish, but there's some really good research in supporting the autoimmune protocol for conditions like Hashimoto's, ulcerative colitis, and Crohn's disease, which are all autoimmune conditions where people have experienced considerable improvements in their conditions. So you look at the AIP, removing everything, and then you're in the reintroduction phase. And for example, the reintroduction phase, you go through the different levels. So level 1, you choose whichever is going to be your favorite food. So for me, it's eggs. That's the thing that I don't like to live without. And you choose one food at a time. And for example, you would maybe just have half a teaspoon of that food, and you leave it for about 15 to 20 to 30 minutes. And then you have a teaspoon of that food. And then again, you leave it for 15 to 20 to 30 minutes. And then maybe a teaspoon and a half of that food. And then again, leave it for that 15 to 20 to 30 minutes. If there's no reaction that you're experiencing, there's no worsening of any symptoms, then after about 3 hours, you have a full meal-sized portion of that food. And then you leave it for about a week and just see what happens. Do any of your symptoms start to come back? Any of your typical for you symptoms occurring? If so, you know that food, your body is not tolerating well. And then you can move on to the next food on the list. And again, remembering you start off with the foods that are on level 1 first, and then you go through the different levels. It's definitely a challenge, but it's just you getting to understand what works for you. We're all so different. There is no one size that fits all, unfortunately. It would be much easier if there was. So this is really you understanding your body and how you can benefit. So just wanted to share quickly what a kind of a balanced macronutrient plate looks like, you know, and this is where you want to be having that a good size of that high quality protein. If you are somebody that is not eating animal products, and you know, so then you will need to be having those beans and lentils, but that's where you can use you know, soak them overnight and actually then cook them in a pressure cooker, because this is really going to reduce the amount of lectin, so your body's not going to react in the same way. But otherwise, looking at that 4 to 8 ounce serving of high quality protein, whatever that looks like for you, you know, like fish, you know, those oily and high in omega-3 oily fish, you know, it could be like your chicken, turkey, you know, whatever it is for you. You want to have a lot, at least really half of your plate to be full of those non-starchy vegetables. And remember, variety is king. You know, think about eating the rainbow. That's going to really make sure you're getting a lot of those phytonutrients, and you're also going to be feeding, you know, your good bacteria, which is great. You can add in some of those root vegetables or those tubers, things like you know, pumpkin, butternut squash, sweet potatoes, those sorts of things, and making sure you're having water, not with your meal, you know, half an hour before, and outside of your meal you're hydrating, and you know, like fruit, getting some good healthy carbs from those low glycemic index fruits, and making sure you're adding and cooking with those healthy fats. I thought I'd share this. This might be something to take a screenshot of, because I am aware that, as always, I've gone over time, and my sincere apologies for that. But this gives you a bit of an idea of what, if you are looking to do something like the autoimmune protocol, what a week's worth of food could look like. So give you some ideas for breakfast, lunches, and dinners. And then really just closing, just wanted to mention very, very briefly, looking at how fasting, in terms of really just looking at that 12-hour window, that's what I would start with. You might want to extend that to a 14-hour window, or perhaps 16-hour window for some. It's not for everyone. Remember, we are all very, very different. So it can really help with reducing that visceral fat, reducing inflammation, and that can help with the treatment of arthritis. So sorry for going over time, guys. Any questions, I'm happy to answer, and thank you very much for your time.
I was very happy to read the book published by Dr. Humeira Badsha, The Wellness Guide to Arthritis. I am a patient and was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis over 10 years ago. And I was very pleased because the book is not limited to just scientific or the traditional Western medicine approach to arthritis. Of course, it talks about the science and the different types of arthritis and the importance of having proper diagnosis and proper protocol for managing the condition, including medication and assistance by your physician. But the book goes well beyond that. It's actually a holistic or integrative approach to the patient.
All right, we've reached our final speaker for this evening, and allow me to introduce Mrs. Ahlaam Ali. She's a functional nutritional practitioner with a specialization in gut health. She has a root cause approach to healing. Rather than treating the symptoms, it means she digs deep into the cause of the illness to help alleviate the need for long-term medication. She works with designing and implementing healing anti-inflammatory diets, supplements, and the whole mind-body-soul connection, which plays a significant role in healing the person. And with this focus in mind, she's here to talk about gut health and how to maintain it. So Mrs. Ahlaam Ali, go ahead.
Thank you very much, ladies. And you've pretty much covered all of this part of my presentation. And I was actually thrilled to listen to the ladies before me, Dr. Humeira Badsha and Victoria, just because we all kind of agree on inflammation and how to manage it all. And I think we may have some overlaps. However, bear with us. I'm leading in a slightly different direction with more research and findings. But I love the fact that you girls have covered everything for an anti-inflammatory diet. So we'll get you guys started now. So I'm sure you've all heard this one, that your gut is the forgotten organ. And in fact, it is your most influential organ. And it is the queen of the castle. And if the queen isn't happy, she will pull the entire castle down, as we all know, and we've all experienced this. So love your gut, and your gut will literally love you back. So what is your gut microbiome? I'm sure this has already been covered, but I will whiz through it very quickly. The bacteria in your gut will dictate your overall health. And this is the battle of the good versus the bad, so the dysbiosis. So when your good and your bad bacteria are out of balance and the bad overtakes the good, that's when your body goes into dysbiosis. There are many ways of actually, lots of symptoms that will reveal the fact that your body is in dysbiosis. Basically, I'm sure you ladies have gone through it, but you will know because it obviously leads to inflammation in various parts of your body, as my next point says. And it affects everything from your hormone health, weight gain, mental fog, insulin resistance, arthritis, and so many other illnesses. So what exactly is inflammation? Many studies show that dysbiosis in the gut is literally one of the main causes of inflammation. It's when your gut is totally out of whack and negatively affects various functions that go on. Inflammation also leads to toxins buildup, first of all being created, built up, and then stored throughout the body, leading to general malaise, migraines, body aches and pains, belly fat, brain fog, water retention, and so many other things. So inflammation within itself is not all bad. As we all know, acute inflammation is actually quite a good thing. It's the body's way of actually redirecting resources to heal wherever the injury is or wherever foreign invasion takes place in your body. It's when the inflammation actually turns into chronic inflammation. So if it's on an ongoing basis and your body is constantly in sympathetic mode as opposed to parasympathetic, that's when inflammation actually becomes more of a problem. Lots of diseases, as we said, are manifested as a result. So what is rheumatoid arthritis? Basically a chronic inflammatory disorder that can cause pain, swelling, stiffness, and loss of function in the fingers, wrist, and other joints throughout the body. This is more for the people who are just sort of finding out a bit more. Many of you know about this already. And it mainly occurs when your immune system mistakenly attacks the body's own tissues, such as the membranes that line the joints. Causes of rheumatoid arthritis aren't completely known yet. There's a lot of research, but a myriad of reasons are regularly cited in the following studies. I mean, genes, we've all looked into that, and obviously, excuse me, research is ongoing. Environmental factors such as cigarette smoking, our diet, which you two ladies have covered beautifully, stress, all of these also play a part in triggering the disease. Intestinal permeability. Now, this is a fairly new field of research, and a lot of research is being conducted, but it's ongoing and the results are still coming in. I will be talking about this in depth. The first two obviously have been well covered in the past, so we'll leave that for now. My presentation is going to be about more intestinal permeability, and in layman's term, it's leaky gut, and limited diversity and quality of your gut microbiome. Okay, so specifically, I will go into the intestinal permeability to start with, and then the gut microbiome. A lot of studies that have been conducted with mice have shown that leaky gut could well be one of the causes of inflammation leading to rheumatoid arthritis. When the lining of the gut has been compromised, and this could be due to our food choices, stress, toxins, it all comes together to create that perfect storm. When that has happened, the lining of the gut gets seriously compromised, and the undigested food particles escape into the bloodstream through the lax tight junctions in the lining. I do have a little diagram of this in one of my next slides. This then leads to inflammation throughout the body, leading to rheumatoid arthritis and many other autoimmune diseases, as previously mentioned. And treatment to repair the gut lining has revealed some very good results in mice and could well be a starting point in treating RA. For those of you who may not know what leaky gut syndrome is, basically these are your intestinal, can you all see my mouse? These are your intestinal mucosal cells. They generally have, they're quite well woven together and they form a nice tight junction. Now, when these tight junctions are consistently exposed to various allergens, it could be, as Victoria said as well, gluten, dairy, tea, coffee, all of that actually starts to erode these mucosal cells. They become leaky, they become inflamed, and then these little spaces start forming and the junctions get a lot looser, a lot more lax. And that's when undigested food particles actually escape and leak through into the bloodstream. When this happens, you get the blood-brain barrier breach, you get inflammation, you get autoimmunity, malabsorption, and nutrient deficiency, because a lot of the food has not really been processed, digested, and absorption hasn't happened. So this basically is the anatomy of inflammation and autoimmunity. Well, part of it, anatomy of the leaky gut. Leading on from this, a research that has been led by a team from UCL is suggesting that although bacterial imbalances, which we cover a little later, in the gut microbiome may play a major role in the development of arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, actual damage to the gut lining directly correlates with joint inflammation and arthritis intensity, which is quite interesting. Okay, this same study showed mice that were bred to have a genetic predisposition to gut permeability also developed signs of severe arthritis. Whereas when a different mouse model engineered to develop collagen-induced arthritis was then found to display reduced joint swelling when, this was very interesting, when the gut permeability was improved. So as Victoria has said as well, with things like bone broth and a few other supplements that are being used to plug these holes and rebuild the lining, that's when you will feel that reduced symptoms and reduced joint swelling will be seen, reduction of the symptoms. Okay. Whilst we're looking at human patients, the researchers also found that suffering from rheumatoid arthritis had higher blood levels of lipopolysaccharide, LPS, and LPS binding protein, LBP, and intestinal fatty acid binding protein. All of these molecules are known biomarkers of intestinal damage, as is zonulin as well, mentioned earlier. And LBP levels in particular are found to correlate with acute disease severity. So some more definitive research done at the University College of London shows that in arthritis, there is profound damage to the gut lining, which fails to work properly as a barrier, as shown in the diagram earlier, as well as an accumulation in the gut of white blood cells that cause the inflammation. Authors have also written it basically that arthritis bacteria cross the prohibited border of the intestinal lining, and that repairing the gut permeability defects with specific drugs inhibits joint inflammation. And it doesn't have to be specific drugs. Bone broth is such a brilliant way of dealing with it, as well as collagen specifically, collagen supplements. And the research cannot completely explain the chain of mechanisms that link this weakening of the gut lining with arthritis. So although modulating the degree of gut permeability was found to directly relate to joint inflammation, there are still a lot of missing links in that relationship yet to be described, researched and described. Okay, so as a result, Maury, the lead scientist on the study, says these findings do indicate that the gut would be a useful therapeutic target, at least to start with. She particularly speculates that improving the gut permeability can be an effective new treatment model. Obviously, it is under study. And the findings suggest that the intestinal lining is a therapeutic target to get started with. Importantly, they found that using existing drugs that restore the gut barrier integrity, prevent the gut from becoming leaky, or inhibit inflammatory cells from moving to and from the gut. This could reduce the severity of the symptoms in the preclinical models. Okay, so that was about the leaky gut and intestinal permeability. Now on to the gut microbiome, which you ladies have covered. I shall go into it slightly differently. So if your gut microbiome is out of whack, this can actually lead to so many other conditions, as I'm sure we all know, from depression to rheumatoid arthritis to non-alcoholic fatty acid disease, obesity, heart disease, chronic kidney disease. This is all very recent. Apparently, it's been said also in functional medicine, this is the decade of the microbiome. So everything is literally dependent on your microbiome and the vagus nerve. I'm sure you all know about the vagus nerve. I won't go into that, but they say what goes on in the vagus nerve does not stay in Vegas, VAGUS. So that's quite an interesting concept, which we can cover at another time, considering we have limited time here. So the gut microbiome and immune system, we all know immune system is influenced by a specific microbiome, which is a network of microorganisms that live in and on the human body. And these microbes outnumber the body cells by 10 to 1. Trillions of these microbes, both helpful and harmful, reside in our digestive tract. So, literally the gut microbiome dictates pretty much everything, and it has been clearly linked to arthritis in animal studies. And at NYU, we had some in-depth research to see if these microbes might also be associated with RA in humans. And Dr. Dan Littman of NYU School of Medicine has led a team that examined DNA in 114 stool samples from both healthy people and those with rheumatoid or psoriatic arthritis. And the team has identified gut bacteria by extracting the DNA from the samples and then analyzing a bacteria-specific gene. called the 16S ribosomal RNA gene, which goes on to show that 75% of people with new onset untreated RA had this particular bacteria, Prevotella copri, in the intestinal microbiome. Whereas in comparison, it was present in only 12% of people with chronic treated RA, 38% of people with psoriatic arthritis, and 21% of those in the control group, which is quite interesting. Increased levels of this bacteria, P. copri, correlated with reductions in several groups of beneficial microbes, such as Bacteroides. And these researchers also performed more complete DNA sequencing and on a subset of samples and identified unique Prevotella genes that correlated with RA. So all of these have been shown that the specific bacteria does correlate with the symptoms and the presence of RA. And to test whether P. copri could influence inflammation, the team administered the bacteria to perfectly healthy mice so that the bacteria became part of their gut microbiome. And then the mice were then given a chemical that induced colitis, a model of gut inflammation. Animals with the P. copri developed more severe symptoms than the mice that hadn't received the bacteria. Hence, the finding does provide further evidence for a potential role of P. copri in inflammation. I know that other factors have actually been covered, but chronic stress without adequate management, ongoing sleep deprivation, poor eating hygiene and habits, pollution around us, toxins in our food, and all of these actually contribute to dysbiosis, leaky gut, hence the inflammation. So what do we do about all of this? A lot of what Dr. Humeira and Victoria have said, implement that. So we're basically managing existing inflammation intelligently by doing all of the things the ladies before me have said. Proactively eliminate inflammation, so eliminate all the foods that actually cause inflammation, bring in the ones that actually are anti-inflammatory. Along with that, manage our lifestyles. So the three things that we always say in functional medicine is maximize, minimize, and prioritize, just to remember that. So maximize what works best, healthy foods, exercise, meditation. Minimize what hampers our health, basically. Things like alcohol, red meat, processed foods. Prioritize what feels good. Relaxation, good music, healthy relationships, de-stress, family, travel, spend time with family. Many of us actually don't manage to do enough of that. We're just so busy rushing around. So that is a critical aspect. Here we are in a nutshell, basic tips. Clear out all processed foods and sodas. Follow a basic clean eating meal plan. Start buying whole foods each week and experiment with new foods. The more varied, the better. It's been proven that there is a certain tribe in Africa and they have very, very little disease of any kind identified. And basically, when they've studied the eating habits of that tribe, apparently they're eating 70 different vegetables in a week. And the diverse bacteria and the diverse microbiome, due to the actual varied number of vegetables, has really helped them keep the dysbiosis at bay. Whereas we normally just tend to do about 3 or 4 vegetables that we're really comfortable with and stick with those just because we're happy with them. So the trick is the more varied, the better it is. Get in your Z's, minimum 8 hours a night. And it's not just about getting 8 hours, it's got to be quality sleep. So I don't know if anybody's covered this before me, but there's something about mouth breathers, and that in itself was a very important thing, that very simple but very important little tip that has helped a lot of my patients. A lot of us being mouth breathers, we don't get the quality of sleep that we should be getting. And a very important and basic tip called mouth taping has helped so many of my patients to get better quality sleep, because then they start breathing through their nose. So something to take note of. Eliminate stress. I know it's easier said than done, or learn to manage it better through meditation, etc. And if there are situations that you can avoid to eliminate stress, then obviously that's more important, to eliminate it and then learn to manage it as well, where you can't eliminate. This was also covered. Avoid more than 2 units of tea, coffee, alcohol per day, and get at least 40 to 60 minutes of exercise daily. Focus on heat. So recommendations, let's focus on healing the gut lining and work with the 5 R's of resetting the gut, which Victoria has covered. Remove, repair, replace, re-inoculate, and rebalance. And 5 things to include in your diet. Well, there's 6 here. Probiotics, prebiotics, digestive enzymes. Digest A, Digest Gold is generally my favorite one as well. Gut healing supplements, chicken broth, any sort of broth, chicken or beef, or eat vegan if you're vegan. That is really, really high in collagen supplements, whole foods rather than more sort of packaged foods, and fermented foods. And over to you guys for Q&A. That was me. I think we're spot on time.
Hi, my name is Devyani, and I have dealt with autoimmune disorders for over a decade now. The Wellness Guide to Arthritis by Dr. Humeira Badsha is not a book on just arthritis, but on a multitude of other autoimmune disorders. And what is really fantastic about this book is that she also details out recipes and a holistic way of actually dealing with these autoimmune disorders. This was a book I wish I had had when I was unwell, because it would have helped treat me faster and better, because information otherwise is only available in silos, and it all comes together in this book. So if you or your family member has an autoimmune disorder, I would highly recommend that you get your hands on this book. It will just make your life a lot simpler in providing you knowledge and ways to fix it and deal with it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank all the 3 speakers for such a rich and informative talks. Obviously, the talk about diet and arthritis is very important. And perhaps I'll start with asking Dr. Humeira a little bit about the turmeric and the garlic, because what a lot of patients do say is that they do cook a lot with garlic, and they do like to use the turmeric, mix it with milk. Now, would that be enough, or do they have to have fresh garlic, or what would your recommendation be?
So with garlic is actually part of a prebiotic diet, especially even raw garlic has been shown to be part of a prebiotic diet. So that's excellent and important to add. And turmeric is anti-inflammatory. We do add it in our diet. But as far as studies for arthritis go, the only studies we have on turmeric are really not the food-based turmeric, but the concentrated form of turmeric, curcumin, added in capsule form. So having that reduces inflammation. There have been studies at the EULAR a few years back. They presented some cases of patients with osteoarthritis. So sometimes in older patients with osteoarthritis who have pain, especially hand OA, I'll ask them to take turmeric capsules, as the curcumin capsules, because it can safely reduce inflammation. And at a concentration of curcumin, which you cannot really get from the natural turmeric which you're getting. Of course, it's nice to add the turmeric and have it in your food and everything. That's in part of a natural anti-inflammatory process. But if you're actually treating disease, you need the capsule form.
Mm-hmm. Right. So another thing we can ask, what patients are very keen to ask or to know is, when do they introduce this diet? Is it when, right from the very beginning of their diagnosis, or would they wait until they're stable, or what would you, recommend?
I think the earlier, the better. And I really believe in gut health. And Ahlaam, would you like to take that? Because, obviously, even before disease is established, it would be better. So I'll let Ahlaam take that.
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think what we all need to be doing is more sort of proactive approach to inflammation, because all of us are prone to inflammation to a greater or a smaller degree, but having a more proactive approach means you're actually introducing all these foods and eliminating the inflammatory ones well before anything gets diagnosed. However, if you've come to a stage where it's already been diagnosed, then literally as soon as possible. But I just say to a lot of my patients, just get onto it at any age. Even with my son who's 23, it's never too early, to be honest, in my opinion. And I love the fact that Dr. Humeira had recommended for me as well, the capsule form curcumin. I was taking it in more sort of food and the golden milk sort of situation. However, the actual concentrated supplements have really, really helped me as well. I'm very active. I go hiking. I'm exercising a lot, and that has really, really helped to reduce the inflammation. And the one that I have used, and I think we've discussed this as well, Humeira, the Humeira curcumin, which is slow release. And it's researched very, very well. And within the functional medicine circles, it's been used to actually replace painkillers. It's that effective. And because of the sustained release, it's actually having a longer term effect. And you just need to take it once a day. It's really, really helped. So thanks for that, Humeira.
Right, okay, we have a few questions from our lovely patients. So we'll start with the very first question. They're asking, does jaggery have the same effect? And I think it's into.
I think May has got problems with the connection. So the question would really be something for Victoria to take. She doesn't seem to be back on the call. Hi, May, yeah, you're back.
Yeah, sorry. Hi.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're back. We can hear you.
Yeah, okay. So sorry about this poor connection. The question from one of our patients is, does jaggery have the same effect, I believe, as sugar? That was probably...
Yeah, so I think Victoria had that slide about all the 50 names for sugar and how every one of them does have some effects on stimulating insulin release and insulin, even when they're natural sugars, and you have to be careful. Some are less. Of course, processed white sugar is the worst, and let Ahlaam, she seems keen to take this. So I'll let you answer that, Ahlaam. Yeah, tell me.
I'm constantly telling people this. People I'm traveling with as well, they're like adding 2 teaspoons of white sugar. I'm like, no, it's poison. It's so much inflammation. But yes, that's a really good question. Jaggery is a much lower irritant, so to speak. White processed sugar, brown sugar, all of those are actually way, way, way worse, and they give you severe spikes. the more natural forms give you the spikes to a lower extent, and then they're not as inflammatory. So yes, instead of, I mean, they're equal in calories probably with white sugar and honey and jaggery. However, the actual after effects of it are much lower if it's jaggery or honey as opposed to white sugar. So I hope that answers the question for the patient.
I mean, avoid all forms of sugar, but if you have to have sugar,
yes, stick to the natural forms. The more
so there's another question on that note about stevia sweetener. Good or bad?
Do you want to take that, Humeira, or shall I?
I think we can, whoever can knows the answers will be, you know, they can have their input, no problem.
I'm happy to answer that because literally this is again what I've been telling my travel buddies. It's about training your taste buds. So whatever we're doing as replacement, eventually you're actually not allowing your taste buds to let go of that sugary taste. So ideally you should just ease out of sugar or ease out of any type of sweetener rather than go cold turkey. And then that's it. Just eliminate it as opposed to looking for replacements. That's my personal advice.
I'm sorry, I had to go to take Victoria's call. She'll come back on, but I do agree, especially, you know, things like Diet Coke have actually shown to increase the risk of obesity. People actually gain more weight with artificial sweeteners because the chemical in it actually somehow stimulates your insulin more and causes weight gain and causes insulin resistance. So if anyone's drinking Diet Coke, it's the worst invention on earth. I saw that guilty look on your face.
Oh God.
Yeah. It's the worst. I personally experienced Diet Coke because I went from I was like in India, grew up in India, and I did my undergrad there, eating very whole foods, very wholesome foods. We never really drank Coke, even maybe once a month at a big festival or a party, but we never drank Diet Coke. And I went to America, and there I was having donuts and Diet Coke, and I developed this horrible urticaria, like itching and hives and rashes. And I was diagnosed with cold urticaria, and I lived in one of the coldest places in the United States, Connecticut. And, you know, it went on for years that my whole face would just blow up in welts with cold urticaria. And I didn't realize it was all the Diet Coke I was drinking. And then I went back, I left America, went back to Singapore, no Diet Coke. Of course, the weather was warmer. And I quit Diet Coke and I improved my diet and went back to Boston, and it didn't happen to me anymore because of Diet Coke. Really
amazing. Oh, I second, third, fourth, fifth that. Totally support that.
It does not actually help with weight loss.
And to be honest, if you have to have Coke, just go for the real thing. Don't go for this absolute crap that they keep. I mean, yeah, there's just no words to describe it. Apart from the sugar spikes, apart from the other inflammatory effects, there's just, I don't know what else to add to it. Everything that you can add. Just the worst possible thing,
Victoria's
we've got a few more questions from the floor. So Nita is asking, can we use rice bran oil?
Victoria, you want to take that since you're just back? Rice bran oil as a cooking oil, I guess.
Yeah, my apologies. Sorry for the confusion and not being there. I would actually sort of steer clear, and I would actually focus on really your avocado oils, your coconut oils, some extra virgin olive oil, and kind of I like to mix it up a bit. I'm also a big fan of ghee, as long as dairy isn't an issue. Going for some grass-fed ghee because it is so healing for the gut lining. So I would really stick to those and sort of just alternate things. You know, I love using a bit of coconut oil, but I know it's not for everyone. So yeah, I think variety is really key as well. So yeah, mixing up the oils a little bit, but really sticking to those, I would suggest.
Indian food tastes fantastic cooked in ghee. But of course, we want to limit how much we eat.
Yeah. It does taste good, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think the other thing as well is when you're looking at the combinations of food. So, you know, if somebody's having like say a grain, and I know that, say, rice with like ghee, that fat is going to behave quite differently in the body. Whereas if you're cooking a little bit of fish with some ghee, so it's also the combinations of foods, you know, combining those fats with the carbohydrates that it kind of unlocks when you've got those carbs there. And my apologies if there's any noise in the background here. But yeah, really looking at those food combinations. So I wouldn't, of course, we don't want to go crazy on the amount of fat that we're having, but a little bit of, you know, ghee goes a long way. And yeah, it's just so healing for the gut lining.
All right. Oh, that's very helpful. Now, I'm quite interested to know the answer of this question because I'm guilty of having an air fryer myself. So someone's asking, is using an air fryer safe? Victoria?
For me to that, sure. It's certainly better than, it's a better option than going for, you know, your deep fat fryer. Again, it comes down to those, just looking at the temperature. So I would say maybe it's not something to be using every day. Again, if I personally operate on a kind of an 80-20, and I don't have arthritis, but I have an autoimmune condition. And there'll be times where you go, okay, I'm going to do something and use an air fryer, but I wouldn't maybe necessarily be using it on a daily basis.
Right. Okay. Right. I suppose,
what are the risks of using an air fryer on a daily basis?
I think it's just that temperature, sort of like looking at, you know, is that going to have an impact on those advanced glycation end products, you know? And again, sometimes having some raw foods, sometimes having the cooked foods, it's really, so it's not just what we're having, but the way that we're cooking things. So I think as well, maybe there's just not enough research around, you know, some of these products as well. So I would just say, yeah, using it now and then, but maybe, you know, it's kind of moving, I suppose it's looking at the way, having foods in a more natural way that they were supposed to be delivered to the body. That's how I sort of like operate. And what I advise my clients to do, really. So if you are, you know, doing that on an occasional basis, that's not going to be the end of the world. But yeah, just it's what we do every day that counts. Again, it's that 80-20 policy. You know, I'm by no means perfect. So there are times where, you know, you kind of say, right, I want to have this. But I would say the majority of the time, like during the week, I try to be as good and eat as clean and have, you know, food delivered in the way, as in the food that I'm eating in its most natural form, going back to those whole foods the way they should be.
All right, okay. I think the questions are coming in fast and furious. Right, okay. So just for the interest of time, I'll try and go through this a bit quicker. So someone's asking, is the consumption of gluten-free carbs, I think at the moment here, fine?
Just the label gluten-free, it's a bit like, you know, when I sort of mentioned about going for artificial sweeteners and it's no sugar added, and, you know, yeah, there's no sugar added, but there's something else added in there. And often those gluten-free products are going to have something else in it, you know. So a lot of the gluten-free breads, pastas, a lot of the gluten-free biscuits, they actually have a much higher impact on blood sugar levels and therefore on insulin and therefore inflammation. So they might not be, you know, affecting that zonulin, which is going to affect the leaky gut, but they're going to have an impact on inflammation in terms of blood sugar. I would say if you're looking at gluten-free, if grains are okay for you, then really going for things that are naturally gluten-free, you know, some sprouted quinoa, some buckwheat, those are going to be much, much better options. There's is it Shah, I think, and I'm not naming or shaming any company, but, you know, sometimes you get those gluten-free products, and when you actually look at what's...
Sorry.
Okay, no worries.
That's a ship arriving behind me.
Okay.
Very exotic.
Sorry.
Very exotic. I love that.
I really have to show you this. I have to show you the sunset.
Oh my God.
Oh, wow. That's gorgeous. What, may I ask where you are?
I am in Paros.
Oh, lovely.
Sorry
Lovely.
for the distraction.
No worries. No worries.
No
I
worries
think,
at all.
thanks very much. We've got a couple of more questions, I think. One from Abir. So she's going back to the question about the turmeric again. So she's saying, how long do you expect to start feeling the difference? And is there any particular time during the day that it's best to take them? So
I'm not sure who. Yes, I'm happy to answer if anybody else wants to answer that. I don't mind.
I mean, I can answer from personal experience if everybody wants, because I take Humeira curcumin, and I take 2 of those tablets at night, because that's when I feel my body is repairing and reconstructing. That's when I take it. And if I've had an intensive exercise, we just climbed a mountain yesterday, so I actually took 3 of those straight after the climb. So generally after an activity is when I take it. Humeira, you might want to add to that, or at bedtime. Victoria, what do you suggest? What do you do normally?
So I'm a big fan of I generally have it in my food form. So as long as you're combining that with some black pepper and some fat, I will often have like maybe just a bedtime sort of drink with a bit of coconut milk with some turmeric and some cinnamon, a really nice anti-inflammatory drink. So that's how I would personally have it. But yeah, I would say definitely, like you sort of said, if you're needing a bit of extra support, if you've actually done quite an extensive bit of exercise, climbing a mountain sounds very adventurous, then yeah, a little bit of that extra support can go a long way with taking out more turmeric.
So as I said before, when we want to treat arthritis or pain for people who actually got inflammation and pain, so the studies have supported use of the concentrated form, the curcumin, at least 1,000 milligrams per day. And so that's where they're asking about the capsule. So it doesn't have to be in any particular day. It depends on when you feel worse or when you have more activity, as Ahlaam said. So, I mean, I'm not particular about the time of day.
No, that's very helpful. Now, probably we'll leave this to the last question. It's from Neda. Neda Hassan. Hi, Neda. So she's got a question. She's saying that a lot of patients are very keen on doing a food tolerance test. And the reason behind that is that they think they might be allergic to certain kinds of food and that they might be triggering their immune response. So what are your thoughts about this? Is this genuine, not genuine?
As doctors, you know, we have, I know Victoria might say something different. But as a doctor, I tell my patients, look, we don't really have a lot of evidence or validation of these food intolerance tests. We don't have a lot of, I mean, it's a lot of money to spend. And we actually did a study of our autoimmune patients who had done the food intolerance tests. It was a big rage about a few years ago. I don't see so many people doing it anymore. But people used to bring these tests in. So we actually collated all the data. And we found that 95% were intolerant to gluten and 95% were intolerant to dairy. And so it's basically the same thing which we're telling everyone. So we don't know there's really, like, there may be some people who have something called palindromic rheumatism, where they have these sudden flares of inflammation and arthritis and joints every 1 week or so, they like get really bad. So in palindromic rheumatism, 1/3 of them will actually develop rheumatoid arthritis, but 1/3 will keep having these palindromes of pain, and it could be food related. And I've had patients who actually did a food intolerance test and went like really religiously off those foods and managed to get off their palindromic rheumatism. But that's anecdotal. I'm not sure there's really any evidence for these tests, but I'll let the others take the stage.
I would tend to agree with you because really, and I've seen so many, you know, food intolerance test results. And as you said, a couple of years ago, you know, I think, yeah, certainly the last 5 to yeah, it was such a common thing that people just wanted to see those results. And pretty much dairy and gluten, often eggs. These are the things that come up. And actually what it's showing you, it's kind of just showing that there's that leaky gut. And so it's not really getting down to the root cause. If people want to invest in a test, I'm much more likely to suggest actually looking at a comprehensive stool test to see, is there any kind of like dysbiosis going on, any kind of like issues with parasites, anything that needs to be treated, because that the candida as well, that could be one of the underlying causes. But really, it's also only just looking at the protein if you're looking at the IgG. And a lot of these other foods that I've suggested to maybe take out, people looking at doing the autoimmune protocol, it's not always to do with that protein. There can be other chemicals that people are reacting to within those foods. So yeah, it's not something that I recommend people do, but definitely there are some people, they just want, well, less and less nowadays, but certainly a few years ago, they just wanted to see that test. So yeah, I agree with Dr. Humeira there.
No, brilliant. I think really, sorry, Dr. Humeira, do you want to say something?
No, I was asking if Ahlaam had any other opinion.
Well, I do have some input. I was just thinking through both of your comments. I've found, even with myself, not just with my patients, that certain things, the most common ones are the gluten and the dairy. But sometimes something very unusual does pop up on these tests. And that's why I was just thinking through the benefits of it. For instance, when I had my tests done a few years ago and then consistently every year, some very simple things that we would not have thought of, things like honey. I was intolerant to honey, garlic, and ginger. And I could see myself getting severely bloated, but I wasn't willing to accept until I saw the results. And when I actually eliminated these items, I actually felt 1,000 times better. It's really strange because I know some of the common ones are gluten, dairy, eggs, but some unusual ones did come up and I thought those were very useful. So I think a one-off test, maybe one every 2 or 3 years, is actually not such a bad thing, in my opinion, because I've worked with them a lot, even for myself and my son. And it's really held us in good stead. So, I mean, I guess it depends on every patient or every individual. If they have a lot of intolerances, then yes, it does boil down to the fact that there is a leaky gut scenario going on, which is what's causing all of these intolerances. So if you remove or restrict the foods that have come up on the test, it does help the leaky gut situation. I don't know what you girls think.
I think for the majority of people, they don't need this test. They may be a minority or having such severe symptoms that they need it, but I would say 98 to 99% should be discouraged from doing these tests, which are not validated and they're really expensive, not covered by insurance. So unless they really have lots of symptoms.
I think if they really want it, I get them to have it. If their insurance is covering it and they're really curious, because once they see things in black and white, I have people who say, oh, but I've eaten nuts all my life and I'm not intolerant. I know I'm not because I've eaten them all my life. But that's exactly the problem, because they've OD'd on it. That's why your body develops an intolerance, because you've actually given it too much of the same food. So it's a matter of rotation as well. So anybody who's asking, if you feel that you're actually intolerant to something, just rotate foods and then you'll kind of manage it all better.
I suppose, as you said, it's quite an individualized,
yes,
really. So that's quite helpful. That's quite helpful. Obviously, the topic about diet and nutrition and arthritis can go on and on and on, because it's a very interesting, there's going to be loads and loads of questions, but I think in the interest of timekeeping, we're probably going to
I also wanted to just mention that Victoria was my co-author on the book, which is being heavily plugged during World Arthritis Week. The proceeds of the book do go to the Middle East Arthritis Foundation, and that's why we are allowing its promotion. It's not for our personal gain, but Victoria wrote the chapters on gut health.
Amazing.
And she had a lovely lovely recipes in the book. Very delicious. So can't wait to try.
Yeah, so
Brilliant.
if each of you want to just have a final word before we close, you can go ahead. Go ahead, Victoria, because you're on the screen now.
Yeah, I think it's obviously diet, what we're eating is so important, but it really has to be that holistic approach, minimizing stress, maximizing sleep, getting sunshine, getting the correct supplements, aligning your health with the circadian clock as well is something that I'm just finding really works for the patient. So just it's all those small, consistent behaviors that when we do them, they really make the big difference.
Brilliant. Ahlaam?
I would say listen to your body, get in tune with your body. Generally, we're so sort of disturbed and distracted by all that's going on around us, the noise. If we could only tune in and possibly keep a journal of everything you eat and how your body reacts to it, then you don't even need those tests or anything. Intuitive eating is what I get people to now practice, mindful and intuitive eating. And yes, like we said, everything else around you, the stress, the toxic people, toxic situations, toxins in our foods, all of that, keep that in mind and just keep your journal, and try and get away once in a while. Go live on the beach for a little while. Sometimes you just need to unplug. I find that regularly we need to unplug from electronics and from our regular lives. So yeah, that's me.
Fantastic. Humeira, your final word or line?
Thank you. I mean, I've learned a lot first from patients. So, we, Maysam, as doctors, we've not really been taught about nutrition much. As part of my training in rheumatology, I was always told to tell patients, oh yeah, eat whatever you like, diet has nothing to do with it. So this is I had to learn everything on my own, really. And then I started working with people like Victoria and Ahlaam and others in the field. But actually my patients were the ones who first taught me. There was a lady called Abir who would show up at my office, say, I ate bread yesterday and look at my wrist, doctor, it will be blown up. And then she eliminated these foods and really was able to come off a biological. She proved it to me, and there were so many after that. So I'm not an advocate of going off medication, but I'm an advocate of really improving your arthritis and staying on the least possible medications, because I do believe that can be done. And I believe in this holistic approach, which, I think we can do so much to improve our body. I mean, even if you don't cure yourself of arthritis, you're going to be much more healthy if you follow what Victoria and Ahlaam are talking about, what we've been advocating. And I'm sure you're going to quit Diet Coke from today.
I'm sure we'll do a lot of things. Empty that cupboard.
We never talked about not smoking. We forgot to all mention do not smoke. And that's the worst thing you can do for your body.
No.
Yeah.
No worries. And on that note, I'd like to thank you all. And I'd like to thank all our attendees for joining. And we'll see you again, hopefully tomorrow.
Yeah. Thank you. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Hello, this is Dr. Humeira Badsha, consultant rheumatologist, board member, and founder of the Middle East Arthritis Foundation. It gives me great pleasure to invite you to World Arthritis Week from the 10th to 15th of October. It's a completely online event. Come and learn from expert rheumatologists, physiotherapists, yoga specialists, and nutritionists about your arthritis.
Hi, I'm Sandria. On behalf of the Middle East Arthritis Foundation, I would like to invite you to register to the World Arthritis Week, which happens from the 10th of October. A lot of doctor-patient discussions, professional speaking on mental and emotional well-being, yoga and Pilates and dance happening. So please go all out, register yourselves, friends and caregivers, and enjoy yourselves.
مرحبا، أنا عبير. أنا كتير متحمسة وأنا عم بستنى الإصدار الجديد من أسبوع مرض التهاب المفاصل العالمي اللي حيكون أونلاين حيبدأ ب10 أكتوبر. جلسات ممتعة ومعلومات قيمة ومفيدة بانتظاركم. لهيك لا تنسوا تسجلوا حالكم وتسجلوا عائلاتكم وأصحابكم. بنشوفكم بجلسات الأونلاين، ديروا بالكم على حالكم.